Good afternoon, everybody. As always, it's a pleasure having you here today, joining us, as you can see again from the MAGNiTT office. I'm hoping you're all keeping well, safe, and during these challenging times are being healthy. I'm very excited today for several reasons. Number one, to go over a report that we recently published, which is the Saudi Arabia H1 Venture Capital report, which was done thanks to our partners and sponsors, Saudi Venture Capital Company. I think this has proven to be a key piece of research in the kingdom, and not just in the kingdom, but beyond, that highlights the surge, as we call it, the venture surge that's been taking place, thanks to many different initiatives that have been driven, with SVC being one of the key protagonists that's really driving the way. To put a couple of things into numbers, $95 million of investment was made into Saudi-based startups in the first 6 months of this year. That's already 100% higher than the same period last year, and it's already surpassed the total amount of funding that took place in 2019. What we also saw was that 45 deals were made, which was slightly lower than this time. Higher than this time last year, but lower than the total number last year. Very similar to the trend that we saw in the MENA report that we published and the discussion I had with Fadi, where we saw that investors are making larger size investments at later stage than earlier stage investments. Another interesting thing, there was 32 different institutions made investments in Saudi-based startups this year. That's already 10% higher than last year, showing that there are new players also excited and interested in this space, which I think is very positive. With e-commerce, and we have the e-commerce well represented on this panel today, leading the way in terms of the sector with the most investment. Before I jump into the discussion, really, when I spoke to Dr. Abil, he was very keen for us to bring in key protagonists from the ecosystem. So today we have 2 investors and 2 founders, because we wanted to kind of share what's happening on the ground during this challenging time, as well as in the time ahead, to put into context what this is. But I leave with the quote that we were asked to share in the report, which I think is very important. His Excellency Yasser Al-Rumayyan said, had the pandemic happened 20, 10, or even 5 years ago, we would have had a really big problem. We're in a better position today. The use of technology is helping us, definitely. And I think it's a real testament to those that are in the technology space that are supporting civilians, society, the economy during this challenging period, and why it is important to see continued growth. $95 million of investment in tech startups, while impressive year over year, is still only a drop in the ocean. And a lot more is needed in terms of support, and there has already been huge support to date, but more growth and development to really see technology and innovation in this space grow and develop for this year and the years to come. And I believe that in Saudi Arabia, you're already seeing that, not only with SVC, but multiple different entities, whether it's Mansh'at, whether it's MISA, whether it's different type of organizations, as well as venture capital and hubs that are being created to support entrepreneurs in this space. But to discuss this with us today, I have the pleasure of 4 gentlemen that are going to be discussing the current state of affairs, what's happened in the last couple of years, what's happened this year, and their views of what's to come. We have Faris Alrashed, who's the founder and chairman of Derayah Ventures and OQAL. So we'll be having someone who's not only from the angel perspective, but from the VC perspective. We have Abdullah Altamami, who's the founding partner and CEO of Merak Capital, which was recently announced. And I'd love to hear a little bit more of what it is that they're doing. And we have 2 founders, Ammar Waganah, you have to tell me how I have to pronounce that properly, sorry, CEO and co-founder of Dokkan Afkar, and Abdulmajeed Alyemni, who is the CEO and founder of Salasa. So let's jump into it. Guys, if you don't mind unmuting your mics. Like I said, I want to get straight into the questions. So I encourage you to kind of discuss this, debate this. If you have counter views, I'd love to hear from both of you. Let's just start off with Abdullah, if you don't mind. Why do you think that we saw these numbers at the beginning of this year? What do you think has been the key contributor to the growth of investments? And why is now a time for someone like yourself? Although you used to do investments through the iNet vehicle, why is now the time to kind of start investing in new vehicles to invest in startups in this space?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Phil, and thank you, everyone. Thank you for the watchers and listeners. To answer the first part of your question, why now is a good time to invest in Saudi, or why now the numbers are really, growing and rapidly growing. Honestly, we believe, and we've always believed this, and this is also has been reflected throughout history. Most companies, whether venture-backed or not, when it comes to regional companies, not only domestic in a single country, usually treat Saudi as the main market for their business. That has been the case for most regional companies throughout history, and it's more so now than before. Back in the day, doing business in Saudi for outside companies or regional companies was not as easy as today. So there are many reasons that are enabling the unlocking of all this potential that's really popping up. One of them is the deregulation or ease of doing business really rapidly increasing in Saudi. And I think this is seen by everyone, whether you're an investor or an entrepreneur. So that's one layer. And there are many initiatives throughout that process, whether from SAGIA before it became Ministry of Investment. Another big catalyst that we had is basically SVC and Jeddah, both mega funds that are investing, whether directly in VC funds or private equity funds, as well as investing directly in a co-investment program, whether through an angel network like OQAL or through other co-investors throughout the ecosystem. So that alone gave a lot of encouragement to the ecosystem to go and push forward and invest. When you're not investing alone, you're investing alongside a strong partner like SVC and Jeddah and their partners of other fund managers, that gives you confidence as an investor. So it increased the number of investors from Saudi. And we all know in terms of concentration of wealth, concentration of investable capital, Saudi is pretty much the major country in the region. With all the benefits that comes from the other country as well, but it is realized that it is the largest economy. And lastly, also, when it comes to the fact that in Saudi Arabia, even before all this unlocking, when you go back to Souq or Kareem, Kareem was a big catalyst as well, and I'm sure Faris can talk a lot about that being part of that story. Major exit encouraged a lot of people to invest and be part of the system and be part of the returns that the investors of Kareem made. That helped a lot of investors, and it's just recent, so it's pushing all that forward. But let me just highlight one thing. Even if we go back in Kareem days or Souq or the other, first, or let's call it the last generation of startups, most of their major markets, when you go and look at the numbers, are Saudi markets. And that comes naturally from an economic point of view. It's just the largest market in the region, high adoption of technology, huge expendable income, big geographic coverage. It's just so attractive as an anchor market, as a main market, to go expand beyond and have your base there and expand beyond to the other adjacent markets. That's why I personally believe, and I think a lot of people started to believe this, I've always believed this, that Saudi will become the leading ecosystem, or not ecosystem, let's call it the leading pillar of an overall ecosystem, because I think all of us are part of the ecosystem.
I want to jump on this.
Go ahead.
If you don't mind, I want to go to the founders, because it's one of the things that I always bring up whenever I speak to some of the government officials or the policymakers or the people driving. Clearly, Saudi Arabia is a huge market and you need to be present. But Ammar and Abdulmajeed, I mean, do you see your growth story being only Saudi, or do you have visions of building your startups outside of Saudi? Because ultimately, when you speak to investors, they want exponential, rapid returns, growth. It's very difficult to be only focused in Saudi. Or do you believe that you can achieve those goals? Let's start with Ammar. Is your view that Saudi is sufficient, or do you need to cross borders?
Okay. So first of all, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity being here.
My pleasure. And apologies for your name.
Yeah, one thing to say here First, we're very lucky to start out of Saudi, where a lot of companies are starting out from other countries, but being in Saudi Arabia is definitely giving our startup an advantage here. Did we cover the Saudi market? The market is still big, and we still have to go about it. But one of the things that I would like to build out of Saudi, and this is something you can say it's a personal challenge for me as Ammar, is to bring out a company from Saudi Arabia out to the world. So I think of Dokkan Afkar, coming out of Saudi Arabia. This is an amazing start, but definitely I want to see more startups exporting products and exporting business outside Saudi Arabia. So Saudi can become always the center where you can definitely have your start here and so on, but then also go to the Middle East and the GCC out of Saudi Arabia.
So have you done that yourself, or you're still focused on Saudi Arabia in your own journey?
Currently right now we're focused on Saudi Arabia, and we're expanding to the GCC first. But then, as I said, we have the vision to go even outside the GCC, going to the Middle East, and eventually also our products can be also some of our categories can be also great for the US or the UK market, and we would love to see things like that happening out of Saudi Arabia.
Thank you. I'll come to you, Abdulmajeed, in a second. But Faris, to jump on the point that Abdullah was making, I mean, having been involved with Careem, how much was the Careem story a spark for interest from angel investors, venture capital, corporate, family offices in Saudi? How much of a FOMO effect did that create for further venture investment in the kingdom?
Thank you, Philip, for having me with founders and with my friend Abdullah. I think I will add to what Abdullah said about this, and also for your question about Careem, adding to what Abdullah says about the growth of the venture fund. I think having the first unicorn in Middle East, when Careem did this in 2019, we saw the ecosystem after that. It's different than before what unicorn did, before Careem story. How was the investment with Careem? It wasn't easy for Careem, like I think the entrepreneur today. Entrepreneur today, they already have angel investors, they have VCs in the seed stage, Series A, late stage. At that time, when Careem started, there wasn't a lot of angel, there wasn't a lot of VC. Even in the late stage, we have to go, I remember we have to go to the corporate VC, which is like STC venture at that time, and also Tayyar as a public company, because there wasn't enough VC for late stage. And after that, we want to go to international VCs. So what happens, I think, and we are lucky today, I'm seeing these two founders, and I'm sure this is the best time for you as a founder, because the ecosystem of Saudi Arabia is ready now. We have a good angel investors who are willing to invest in the early stage, and we also have the VC venture, which is funded with a very professional LPs, and also managed by professional fund managers in the early stage. And also we are seeing that there is also a VC coming for the late stage. And I will give you example of OQAL and Derayah Ventures. OQAL last year, 2019, I think 70% of our investment was seed, and most of them and others follow. This year, 2020, 90% of our investment are seed. So it's giving you that because there is other VC taking the Series A, we are focusing in seed because VC are taking our Series A. The same thing for venture capital. In our case in Derayah, 80% of our fund today that we invested is seed and Series A.
And Faris, specifically, do you see that your peers in this space, whether they be family offices or people that you know, who traditionally used to invest internationally, whether it be the US or Europe in the venture space, are now changing their mindset and investing locally?
Yeah, actually, they are now one of our LPs. And I know some of them before, they never invest in Middle East. They always invest in Silicon Valley or others. But we can see them, they are interested. As I told you, after they cannot believe that we will have a unicorn. When we had a unicorn last year, people from this country, especially Saudis, they want to invest in Saudi Arabia, and they want to invest. Some of them are angel investors, so they are investing through OQAL or other angel investors, and some of them are they are investing through our fund or Abdullah through as an LP, because they know what's the class of venture capital class, because it's not, venture capital is not open for everybody.
It's not charity.
It's a very difficult. It's a very difficult class. It's not a very risky class. So not everyone can invest in this class. So that's why our LPs from family office or from individuals, they know that this is a risky class. So fundraising also is not very easy, and that's why maybe Abdullah already talked about it, that having SVC, having JADA, these help the ecosystem to do a fundraising for a venture capital, especially a venture capital in early stage.
Yeah,
it's very difficult to do the fundraising.
So, I mean, one of the things that I think is very clear across the whole of the region, not just in Saudi, but it's becoming more apparent also in Saudi, is that success stories spark and inspire other people. And you speak to Faris and Abdullah, who've been doing it for a while, and yourself, both as founders, you've been doing it for a while. You will say now is better than ever before, which I think is probably true across the whole of the region. But let's not fool ourselves. There are still many challenges. Abdulmajeed, as a founder who's still trying to scale and grow his company, who has received funding, can you help the audience, and you probably have people from across government, policymakers, people who are interested in the space. How would you categorize, for instance, the 3 largest challenges that you as a founder or you as your peer of founders currently face that you could still get support with or seek support with? You're on mute.
Thank you so much, Philip, for having me. So I believe the first main challenge, I believe, in the region, especially in Saudi, will be the talent acquisition. Definitely the lack of talent, especially that who will willing join a startup, risky startup, and sometimes unstable career. Maybe this is one of the things that make the talent avoid joining a startup. The other thing...
Can I just jump on you on that? Because a lot of people say this about talent, right? And I think you touched on it, but I really want to get people clear on this. When you say talent and the challenge of getting talent, what's the challenge? You're saying it's the mindset, that they understand that it's a difficult job? Is it the pay? Is it the tenure? Is it the skills? What's the challenge with regards to talent that you find and that you can't kind of source out of Saudi?
Okay. I believe the talent is, the challenge here is that you will have lack of talented people when it comes in a certain area like technology and the development. And the problem is the competition on that talent, reach a level that you compete with, for example, the government, new entities for the 2030 vision, who pay really a lot of money, to be honest. And we had a lot of cases that in a way that we're starting competing with the government when it comes to the offers that we spend. But to be honest, now I think with the current circumstances, maybe this challenge will be little bit be easier, because I think that the hiring, as announced, it will not be the same rhythm as usual. There's salary reviews by the government. Then I think maybe this is a good chance for startup to get the talent. The other thing I think is some challenges when it comes to bring un-Saudis employees with you here in Saudi. In terms of visas, in terms of the regulations and so on. Things like this, it drives away people to join. And I think maybe within time we are overcoming this challenge. Now we are relying more on how we can have those remotely out of Saudi, but definitely down the road we would love to have the team all in one place. Back to your question, I think the second challenge is the changing in regulation, especially in our industry. I think this is definitely one of the main challenges, that suddenly you don't know exactly what will happen next. And definitely this is, well, like the 15% VAT that was implemented this month. Yep. I can imagine the impact in everyone, in the purchasing power for people, and how it's reduced their spending. But this is, maybe they will overcome it within time. The third one, I think, and maybe Abdullah and Abdullah, they will get angry for me, but I think maybe the maturity of the investors. I know we don't have a mature ecosystem, and part of it is the investors.
Can I pinpoint you again on that? When you say the maturity of investors, what exactly do you mean?
Well, today I believe the main problem is with we don't have many angel investors who can really add value to the company, plus understand how the structure of a startup works. A lot of angel investors, they have a lot of money, but they don't know how really they really spend on it, and how risky is it to get in that field. Definitely the early stage is really riskier than whatever stage later, but however, need to understand how can you motivate the founders to really drive the startup to the next level. And I think this is really important, to have as many as angel investors as we can, who are mature and understand the nature of the venture capital or the investment in a startup.
Understood. Thank you. Just before I jump back to the investors, Ammar, anything else you'd like to add as challenges that people should be aware of?
Well, I think the startup challenges are pretty discussed in many webinars, but Abdulmajeed highlighted the talents issue, which I think is one of the most important challenges that startups are facing. And yeah, I think startups have to adapt. There are challenges these days, but definitely the team that you're building around the startup and so on, that will pretty much decide how solid the startup and the idea is.
So I'm going to flip it now to Abdullah, and I'll come to Faris in a second. So you've already made multiple investments before Merak. You know the startup scene very well. We've had many conversations around it. Let's start with the question of talent. When you're advising your startups, whether they're international, looking to scale into Saudi or in Saudi, how do you encourage them to solve that issue of talent acquisition? What's your recommendation with them with regards to getting the best teams? Do you have anything that you can share?
Yeah, sure. First, I want to wrap the last point we were talking about. Definitely, when it comes to growing in Saudi, you cannot be satisfied with just in one country. So you got to go beyond Saudi. But Saudi has to be your anchor in terms of if you want to be the largest. Second to that, the UAE can become also that player. I think if Saudi or the UAE is not your anchor, it'll be a very difficult job to scale. So just to wrap that point up. Now going to the talent point, I think the best way, obviously, which is a common answer, is to give them ESOP, give them that incentive, to have them stay, give them vesting period and all that. So
is that easy to do in Saudi? I mean, like we know that there's challenges with this with BVI and local. Is it new? Are people familiar with it? Is it easy to implement?
Good question, Phil. So most of the companies nowadays, not all, but most, are registered in AGGM or BVI or Cayman, regardless of where they operate or however they operate. So using that jurisdiction, it is quite easy to do it, right? And I think people who have reached that stage figured how they do it in different ways: shadow shares, actual shares, treasury shares, different kind of ways. So it's doable, and we've done that in many startups. And I'm sure maybe Abdulmajeed, Ammar, I'm sure Faris has experience with that. So it's pretty common. So that on one side. I think the second side, and even in Merak, and I'm sure investors face that challenge in getting talent, etc. You face it, Phil. Faris, I'm sure he faces it. It's a regular thing, and I'm sure if you go to the US, they have the same issue. There will never be enough talent. If there is enough talent, the price for talent will be very cheap, but that's not the case. But considering that there is indeed demand for that, I believe a major thing is on the CEO or the leader of that company to really make the employee feel that they want to join beyond the monetary value. Especially people, the vision, make them really want to be part of that story. Give them ownership, give them culture. If we give them the same approach of corporate, the corporate world as usual, you come here, you do this task, you focus on A, B, and C, and that's it. Nobody wants to join, because nowadays it's different than before. Employees are treated differently. They have options. And I noticed this. You gotta treat them differently. Not like before, you come here, you do A, B, and C, those are your tasks. No. If they have different opinions, different approaches, you gotta have an open culture. You gotta have a very attractive culture to attract people. I once had difficulty to attract an employee, even though I was willing to offer them more, because they really enjoyed the culture where they were working at. And I'm sure we all face this on a daily basis, and I'm sure each one has their own unique culture. So that's one thing. And I think the other is spending time and taking the risk to invest in employees. We take a lot of risk in employees. When we hire employees, whether for our startups or our own operations, we give them a lot. And I bet you in the first 2 years, we give them more than they give us, because there is very little they can give you when they don't know much about the industry. They can give you something, but not everything that you expect. So you have to invest. You have to take that risk. I'll give you a quick example. Hyperpay. Hyperpay is typical. We now I call it a university, because every time we hire people, after 2 years of them becoming really good, the bank comes and offers them double salary, and they go. We accepted that fact. It's a reality now. Every 2 years, they come and poach. Either a bank or one of the mega tech companies, Oracle, Cisco, etc. We cannot offer something that competes with that. But we got to keep accepting the cycle, and you got to adapt with it. I think there are many challenges. I don't think we're there. I don't think we'll ever be there. We're always going to seek to become better. But we got to learn. And I agree with something Abdulmajeed mentioned as well, regarding the change of regulation. That also is a challenge. But that's something we need, right? Because I think we all agree there are a lot of things that need change. So you got to go through that cycle.
I think
change and
there,
fix,
yeah, I think there what the Kareem story showed, that if you're close to the regulators, you can shape the regulation. The regulation will change, but you as like leading pioneers in the technology space can, if you get it right, kind of even shape the regulation in this space, because in many cases it's very kind of nascent. Abdullah, if you don't mind, I'm just going to jump to Faris quickly. I mean,
go ahead.
I want to do a couple of quick fire questions. By the way, if anyone has any questions that they would like to ask, in about 15 minutes, I'll open it to the audience. So please throw it through the Q&A in the chat. International players. Now there's international coming from the region and there's international coming from outside of the region. Healthy or something to worry about? Saudi Arabia is more open now than it ever has been and likely to be welcoming many companies to the kingdom. Is it something that founders should be worried about, or should they embrace the competition and it'll strive them to create better companies?
Before I answer this question, let me say to Abdulmajeed, I think you have to write the right investor. Yes, we don't have enough angel investor, but I think we have also a very good angel investor, but not enough. But saying we don't have an angel investor, I think this is, I'm sure this is not right. Because if we don't have an angel investor, then I don't think we have all of this grow in the ecosystem and in the last 2 years. Most of these companies that grow comes from the founder and the angel investor. And this is the time for the VC to invest and be positive. And I'm a positive. I think we are in the good timing. Choose the right investor, like what we do. We choose the right founder. And I also would like to add on the founders. Having the talent is not easy as an employee, but today in Saudi Arabia, having a talent as a founder, I think it's beginning, which is good. As a founder, you want to have a talent, let them to be your co-founder, not an employee. They will come if you give them share in the company, if you give them the dream. But if they don't, if you are not a leader, if you don't sell your dream to your co-founder and the employee, no one will join you. And I saw this in Kareem, and I saw it in other companies, and even in the companies that we invest with them last year, we saw how can they bring the talents and co-founders. To answer your question, I think it's a good for the ecosystem, having international VC coming to the region. They have good experience. They know more than what we know. We just started. This is my first VC fund, so I'm learning. Having international fund managers coming to the region with 25 years experience in this sector, I think it's good for the ecosystem. And most of the international VC, I think they are coming for late stage. They are not coming for the early stage, because I think early stage is very difficult for internationals. Early stage, you need the fund manager to be local, so we can help the company in the very difficult time.
So to the founders, though, I mean, specifically international startups. So, I mean, with MISA and the work that Dr. Mazen is doing and supporting companies scaling to the kingdom, I think one solution to more talent is bringing international players that have larger structures that can basically hire, exactly as Abdullah was saying, act as a university, train, and then you guys can potentially take or move, or there is a multiplier benefit of having international players come to the kingdom and operate there. But when you look at competition coming from abroad, does it scare you or does it excite you to create better companies? I'd love to hear from both of you, both Ammar to start with and then Abdulmajeed.
Yeah, well, definitely it excites us because we're seeing how international companies are playing in the Saudi market, their role, and it's very healthy. I believe it is healthy to see to raise the standard for Saudi startups. And I also think at the same time that Saudi startups, they have an advantage over international companies. And at the end of the day, I'm sure there will be a lot of synergies between international and local. And I'm expecting to see a lot of these synergies very soon. So the international companies or startups, big startups, will start coming to Saudi Arabia. And then eventually as well, they will want to save time by also partnering with local startups, and that is actually an opportunity. And then when the two teams basically work together, the local startups will start learning, and once they learn, they will start coming up with new and other startups, and this is how the ecosystem basically is going to be advancing in the future.
Abdulmajeed, do you have any views on this?
Well, I totally agree with Ammar. Maybe he covered all the points. I think it's good to have the international players. They will definitely raise the standard and raise the competition, and in a good direction. And I think this will maybe help the ecosystem in a way or another, and open a new opportunities. And this is maybe حتى even will somehow will solve the talent issue with bringing more talent to Saudi.
Great. So before I go to questions, so again, if anyone has questions, please share them. We'll touch on one subject that I think is quite interesting. There is, in every conversation that I have with people in Saudi Arabia, a very clear, how should we call it, interest with the idea of unicorns coming out of Saudi. You've already mentioned this earlier in this conversation. And to get to a unicorn valuation, there's a couple of steps that you need to go through, and raising a couple of rounds, starting with your seed, your Series A, your Series B, and each one getting bigger until the company is valued at a certain $1 billion mark. That puts a lot of pressure on the ecosystem to create these. And a certain effect of that could be a valuation bubble. Now, I'll go to both of you on both sides. Are you going to see a valuation bubble in Saudi Arabia? And are valuations in favor of entrepreneurs or investors? Let's go to all of you, ideally short answers, but Abdullah, what's your view? Valuations, bubble coming, and is it favorable to entrepreneurs or investors currently?
I think currently in terms of Saudi, favorable to entrepreneurs. Bubble coming, maybe not, but definitely higher than natural, or let's call it accustomed valuations in terms of the potential. Unicorn, I think chasing a unicorn by status might be a bit misleading. We should chase returns, and very successful returns, and very successful return on income, return on investment, rather than a unicorn. If the unicorn is that, then we chase a unicorn. But if that's not the unicorn, $200 million company, $100 million company is a great win. We can do that.
All exits are great wins. Faris is someone who has been involved with a company that was a unicorn. Do you have a view on valuations in favor of entrepreneurs or investors, and whether there's a valuation bubble that could happen with a huge amount of interest from investors in this space?
And I think in 2019, yes, it was too much in favor of the entrepreneur. But we are seeing now in 2020, especially after Corona, even some of the entrepreneurs, they did not do the fundraising at the Corona time, because they see it's not the timing of doing the fundraising. But I think normally what happens when you have money more than deals, then this is normal. But if you have more deals and less money, then that's going to be the time. I think what's happening now, this is normal for any business. What are now thinking and coming to us with a company. They want to start a company because they can see that there is VC and also for the exit. I agree with Abdullah. It's not about I want to have a unicorn. Having 200 or 300, this is enough. If you are an angel or if you are a VC coming in with 10 million cap, and it goes to 200. So the return, it's about the return. And also, it's very good things to say in this event today. We have a new regulatory for the commercial, and it's now, this is, we were dreaming to have something like this in Saudi Arabia 5 years ago or 10 years ago. Today, we will have convertible note, we will have ESOP, we will have, so it's going to be, I think the coming years is better. The other thing is for direct listing in Numu. This is a very good thing for the new companies, especially e-commerce and the startup. It's very easy to go direct listing, and I think this is going to be some of our companies will be going to this direction and exit for us, rather than waiting until we get acquired by international company. Or our market is the number 10 in the world. I mean the stock market. So I think it's good, and it's time for the entrepreneur to not thinking of going for Series C, D, E. Think of any other exit.
Okay, so we've heard from the investors, gents. Abdulmajeed, if you'd like to start. Valuation bubble, or are investors giving you a hard time when you're raising funds, or do you think you still have the upper hand given the number of startups that exist in Saudi?
Well, I think Abdullah and Abu Abdullah, they are the experts here, but for me, I see it, Philip, as a supply and demand, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is a lot of cash in VCs, and there is a few startups worth to be invested in. This is what drives the valuation higher. I believe down the road, there will be more rounds in B and C, which will drive the cash more in VCs and deploy more. This is where the valuation will be lower because the cash might be lower at that time. I don't think it's for the favor of the entrepreneur to have a higher valuation that it deserves, because it's
great point.
Going to trouble in the future, definitely. But I think again, regarding Abu Abdullah point later on, I totally agree. There is a huge angel investor, especially in OQAL, who really add value to the companies, and they are really mature. And we are fortunate in Salasa to have the best angel investor ever. However, I think regarding the valuation, the angel investors, they are the one who set the base when they started the company and valuate in the early stages. And this is where it comes to the next stages to have reasonable valuation.
Great. Ammar, anything else you want to add?
I will add only one thing. Definitely, all these points are great and to the point. One thing just I want to add is that we're all learning throughout the past couple of years, and we're coming up with conclusions. So the VC is making up their conclusions, whether the valuations are higher than usual or no, and the startups are also seeing it. So the ecosystem is gonna figure it out, and things will be fine further down the road. That's
awesome. Great. So I'm going to take the opportunity now to jump on a couple of the questions that we have here. Abdulmajeed, Ammar, or anyone, to be honest, can you talk more about the regulatory obstacles and challenges facing both technology companies and VCs in this current environment? So people that might be looking to scale to the kingdom, or people that are setting up in the kingdom now, what are some of the key, let's call it 3 regulatory things that they need to be aware of? I don't know who would like to take that question from the startup side and maybe from a VC perspective as well.
I believe we are, Philip, we are in an era that all the startups out of the kingdom, they are, have the chance to get in Saudi much easier than any time ever. I think the Ministry of Investment, they are putting a lot of efforts to attract those startups. If I have any advice, just reach them out. You will have a lot of support to get in. Maybe there is different license can they get, but I'm not the expert here, but definitely now the time, especially for technology companies, to get in easier in Saudi market.
Okay. And from a VC perspective, is there more clarity on, I mean, you've just gone through the process, Abdullah. Is there anything that people need to be aware of setting up VCs in Saudi? You're on mute.
Come again, Philip. Can you repeat that, please?
From a regulatory perspective, you just set up Merak Capital. Is there anything that potential VCs that are looking to set up should be aware of from a regulatory perspective in terms of the ease of getting it set up?
Right. So as you know, our company is licensed by the Capital Market Authority, and as well as our fund, which is also similar to Derayah Ventures. I think that some of the other funds are not necessarily done through the Capital Market Authority, but they are currently being switched to be under the CMA. There are a lot of changes happening, which goes back to Abdulmajeed's point, and on the CMA regulations, the Capital Market Authority regulations, to accommodate more flexible structures. Right now, if anyone wants to set up a fund in Saudi, it's preferred that they go through either an agent or a distributor or a partner that is licensed by the Capital Market Authority. And that is a very typical engagement that the company, like another third example is one fund that was launched by Alyemni and OQAL Bakhit. It's OQAL Bakhit is the sponsor, and Alyemni, I believe, was the advisor or technical manager or something like that, but they have their own setup. I'm not aware of the details, but I know it's a partnership. So if you want to set up a fund in Saudi, that's the best way to do it. If you want to follow the regulations, and that's why you should. And now new regulations are coming out. It's called investment regulation or investment fund regulations. Much easier to do it, but you also need to be working through a licensed entity if you want to set up a fund in Saudi. Now you can open, if you are coming from outside Saudi, like some of the other investors from UAE or Jordan or others, you can invest in Saudi. It's the same, and a lot of companies nowadays are either set up an ADGM or, like Faris just mentioned, there's a new regulation that's coming up also from the Ministry of Commerce that will have ESOP, that will have vesting shares, that will have convertible note, that will have a very advanced structures being offered if you even want to set up your company in Saudi. And also there are some talks, advanced talks, of having free zones also in Saudi.
Yeah,
that's something that's really seems to be in advanced talks and might happen very soon. So we're getting there. There are ways to go around it. I think, in my opinion, anything you want to do to optimize your either startup or fund, you can do it in Saudi or even the UAE. I think if someone wants to do it and someone wants to invest and have a fund and have money, they can figure it out, and the tools are there. The same thing for a startup. It's not as easy as elsewhere, but it's doable, and many have done it.
Takes time.
It's getting there, exactly.
There's a couple of questions here, and I just wanted to highlight. A few people asked how they can find a list of the VCs in Saudi, how they can find out the startups. Obviously, it would be wrong for me not to plug MAGNiTT. Obviously, every single investment, every single VC, every single startup that we have listed there, you're able to get access to. Someone's asking about the report. Obviously, the one that we did with SVC is available for free. But if you would like to purchase a full report, I think we've done up to a 60-page deep dive on the whole of the industry, all of the most most active investors. You can get that, and my colleague has shared a promo code KSA20, which you can get as part of a subscription. You can get the research report itself, and you can connect with all of these guys. A few of you asking for their emails. You can actually connect with all of these gentlemen and their institutions directly on the platform. So I encourage you to do that. That's my plug over. So safe notes. There's a few questions here talking about safe notes and the applicability of convertible notes and safe notes in Saudi Arabia. Maybe one of the investors would like to highlight, is that something that you can use, or are they back-to-back or effectively done with international entities, not with the local entities in Saudi Arabia? I don't know.
You want to go ahead, Faris?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Faris. Yeah.
Yeah, I will add to the things that Abdullah said about CMA. You know, AP, to have an APs before in Saudi Arabia, you have to have a 50 million riyal of capital, then reduced to 20 million, then reduced to 5 million. Then now with the new regulation, you just give a business plan of 12 months, and this is your capital. It's coming very good for a VC fund manager to have a fund in Saudi Arabia. People, they think that it's very difficult, but I think now it's the CMA with the new regulation, not yet announced, but with the new regulation, it's going to be very easy. For the safe note, sorry to say, no, we cannot do it in Saudi Arabia. We cannot do it in safe case. Most of the startup, we have 8 companies in our portfolio. 100% of them are Cayman, ADGM, and we have to do it because we don't have the regulation. And that's what I told you before. I think with the new commerce that's coming, inshallah, it will be making it more easier to us to do the safer case in Saudi Arabia. Why not?
So before we end, and I thank you very much all for your time, there's an interesting question here that says that the UAE has a plethora of talent for startups and investors alike. What needs to happen and change in Saudi for it to become a stronger entrepreneurial hub to attract talent from abroad? Do any of you have any views on this? Maybe Ammar and Abdulmajeed from a startup perspective?
Well, yeah, definitely easing the process for startups and giving special exemptions for startups to bring those talents will really help. And I think, yes, it's always a debate because it can also be misused by other organizations. So figuring out how to solve this will be a great add. There could be a lot of scenarios where we can also see the kind of cooperation between talents in UAE and in Saudi Arabia, and definitely that would be worth looking at it and see how we can fill that gap of talent in Saudi.
Okay. Anyone else have any other views on this?
From the talent perspective?
What has to change to see more talent coming to Saudi Arabia from abroad?
One thing I noticed, to be honest, I was very happy to see in terms of talent, I think very senior or mid or low, but very senior, I noticed recently. There are a lot of startups in Saudi being set up now and getting funding with co-founders completely not even Arab, like from India or from one guy from Nimsa. And then other, so some others from different kinds of the world, and this is increasing, right? And I think this is becoming easier because, and this will take a little bit of time, maybe a two-year horizon or so, 2 to 3 years. There is a shift in the regulations to attract high-talented, medium to high-talented foreigners, and de-incentivize attracting low-talented labor. They want to make this more expensive or make it more difficult, and they want to make it easier to attract the high talented people with programs like the golden residency and some of the gifts, like if you are super talented, they might give you this as a gift. So this is happening. It's there, and we can see it in real action with a bunch of startups that I think you featured also, Philip, in MAGNiTT, that got funding in Saudi startups.
Yep. Many of them are moving their headquarters there.
Exactly. The founders are not from Saudi, and not even Arab. So we're getting there, and we're just starting.
Last question, which I think is a technical one because there's a few people asking it, and international startups set up in UAE, Jordan, Lebanon, can they benefit from funding in Saudi Arabia, and how? So either Faris or Abdullah, if you can explain.
Yes, of course. We are looking for deals and new ventures. And as a fund, actually, we have a SVC as an anchor investor. And an SVC, we don't have a problem if they are in the GCC and they want to move in Saudi Arabia. And if they have the headquarters in Saudi Arabia. And that's why you can see some of the startup in Jordan or in UAE moving to Saudi Arabia and making the headquarters in Saudi Arabia.
Awesome. Gentlemen, thank you. As always, it's great. It has really been refreshing to see what's happening in Saudi Arabia. It's been great to see the activity. I mean, unfortunately, the last time I was there in January, we haven't been able to come in, and you haven't been able to come out yet. But last year alone, I think I visited 3-4 times, and every time I went, it was incredible to see the rate of growth, the policies, the changes, the things that are happening there. And I'm very excited to see how coming out of this current environment that we're in, what it is that we'll see, the growth and opportunities that will come. And I think that even during this period, the government initiatives and the work that's being done from an investor perspective, the growth that you're seeing by certain startups in this environment will only make it stronger. And I think that we're definitely on our way to, like I said, what I like to hear, good return on investments, whether they're unicorn or not. Let's see some good case studies, good success stories, inshallah, you guys as well, so that they can really inspire founders and international investors and the wider community in what's happening in this space. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you to everybody that's joined us today. We'll send a wrap-up email again with a video of this webinar, as well as the promo code that I mentioned, KSA20, for anyone that would like to purchase the reports or access the platform. And in advance, I wish you all a Eid Mubarak for next week. And we look forward to seeing you, inshallah, soon, all in person.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.